to order. Mrs. Jasek, if I could please have a roll call of members.
Mr. Kewaskum? Here. Mr. Leister?
Here.
Mrs. Sinata? Here. Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mrs. Jason? Here. Mrs. Mariano?
Here.
Mr. Hanson?
Here. At this time, if you would please take a moment of silence. Mr. Leister, if you would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mazza, we do have verification of public notice pursuant to 1924. Yes, sir. Sir. Agenda, before I call for approval, are there any corrections or deletions to this evening's agenda?
I would like to somehow move 9C either to closed session or in new business, because I would like to discuss that with my fellow board members.
Closed session is not an option. It's not a posted element for tonight's event. If you have discussion, we could put it in new business, and if we have elements of discussion that can be discussed in open session, we'll have to.
I'd like to move it into new business now.
Very good. Item 9C will be moved to 12E.
9C? Not on my agenda. It's really, it's not on my Tomsky's resignation. It's not on that.
Abstentions are for roll call votes only. It would be a voice vote, so you wouldn't have to vote. Okay. The majority would carry, but it's a good point to bring up that you were absent for the 24th, and yes. You just don't vote.
Thank you.
I would like to also ask that we eliminate item number 8 from this evening's agenda. I will not qualify my concerns or my points. I will simply ask that it be skipped. Are there any further comments or issues for corrections in this evening's agenda? A motion then to approve with the 2 changes as requested.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Mrs. Mary Miller to approve the agenda. Second by Mr. Jim Leister. Further comment or discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, please say no. Motion carries. At this time, we have 4 individuals for expression this evening in order listed. Mrs. Mary Miller, regarding the KHS musical.
I just want to state that the musical was incredibly awesome, and that the parents and the community should be so proud of what the high school kids did, and the band and choral directors. It was just so excellent. I mean, I can't say anything else. So our community should be very proud of what everybody put into this. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Mary. Next on the list is Sarah George regarding the charter school.
Yes, I'd like to speak on behalf of my husband and I at this statement. Is that we believe that our community needs to have a charter school because we want our children to have the freedom to learn in a way that works best for them, whether it be visually or kinetic or possibly auditory, whatever method. We want them to learn in a way that excites them and they become motivated to excel. We don't want our children to be held back by a common standard. The goal is to unlock our children's greatest potential and that they strive to achieve greatness. And to do this, we feel that we can't keep educating our children using the same model that's been used since the 19th century, expecting different results. We need to find innovative, creative ways to teach children. We need a charter school that will contrast the present learning model. The one-size-fits-all method of educating is not the most productive way of educating our children in this present age. We need a charter school that engages students and parents and teachers together to achieve the best possible outcome. And with this charter school, I believe that Kewaskum has an opportunity to reform the way that we educate the children of tomorrow.
Thank you. Next on the list is Tracy Herman regarding charter as well.
I'll come up here, it's easier than yelling across the table.
Yes, please.
In spring of 1964, construction began in the building of Wayne School with students walking through the doors on November 10th that same year, as the first classes were held at the current location. Here we are 50 years later, in the spring of 2014, talking about construction, but in a different way. Not necessarily a building, but how our children learn. I truly believe that this type of school, I for Learning Charter School, would be a positive thing to have in our community and district. And in 50 years, we'll be glad that we took a chance. Yes, there are going to be bumps, and we are going to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes along the way. We make new mistakes when getting a new textbook in a classroom and learn from those mistakes. The same thing will happen if you decide to go the route of a charter school here in Kewaskum. Nothing is perfect. I'm going to read you a letter of recommendation that my husband and I wrote. He wanted to be here as well, but tonight he's at fire department school. We wanted you to realize that we want what's not only best for our kids, but other kids and also the great community that we live and are very involved in. I for Learning Charter School is the name you see today, and we, the innovation team, came up with. But on a side note, I would hate to see the history of this great school's name be lost. So for now, I'm going to call it Wayne's I for Learning Academy. For now, and hope to bring Wayne back into the name of this if this grant is given to us. The excitement from Joel and Heidi in regards to this type of learning is contagious. And I'm equally excited to see how this school could also be contagious for others in our district. To whom it may concern, my name is Tracy Herman, and my husband is Tim Herman. We live in the Wayne area of the Kewaskum School District with our 2 children who are currently in 4th and 7th grade in the district. There's a lot of family history for us here in Wayne, as our children are 5th generation to go to school here. We are writing in the support for I for Learning School's planning grant application. This charter school would be a great addition to our district, and will give an opportunity for our children to soar and achieve personal as well as educational growth in a variety of ways. We are owners of a small hog business, help on the family farm, and are very active in the community in a variety of ways. We both are members of the FFA alumni and Colesville Fire Department by serving the community as volunteer emergency medical responders. Tim is a firefighter and EMR training officer as well. We are active at church serving as Sunday school teachers, Ladies' Aid member, and past council member at Zion Lutheran Church. We stay active within the schools by attending many school board meetings, as well as volunteering at many activities and events in our schools at all levels of education. Our children are involved in community sports, and we volunteer when help is needed. I currently serve on the WES PTO board and involved with parents in the middle and middle school level. Tim is the 4th generation growing up, as well as living in this community, and has family ties on both sides that are still very much a part of this community. We chose to stay and raise our family in this rural community, as there are family members still farming and living here in Wayne, and wanted our kids to live in the country life. We are committed to the best interest of our community, and feel this charter school will help children advance quickly and inspire them to learn in many different aspects of life. Technology changes daily, but children grasp onto these changes quickly, and education can be the same way. By changing how they learn, they can grasp onto these changes, ignite, and explode into great, passionate individuals. Children are always touching things and asking why. Let's give them an opportunity to explore and let them learn firsthand the answers to some of these questions by helping guide them, like a compass guides you in the direction you need to go to get to your correct destination. We support I for Learning Charter School 100% here in this community, as there are so many lifelong learning experiences right here in our own backyard, and can give any child an individualized, well-rounded education. By providing this individualized learning opportunity, students can explore hands-on and ignite a passion for future careers, as well as exploratory learning in this community for future generations. We hope you consider I4Learning Charter School for this planning grant, as we would be blessed and excited to see our children strive beyond imagination. Students will not only be the ones benefiting from the school, but we believe teachers will be inspired, and our community will reap the benefits for many generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lastly, we have Wendy Buckerhady speaking about various topics.
Varies, but mainly the election. First off, I'm disgusted and appalled with the character assassination of Tim Rantham. Even if you didn't agree with Mr. Rantham's managing the board, he didn't deserve the personal attacks. Tim is a good man that had nothing but the best of intentions. He is hardworking, dedicated, thorough, and genuine. Attacking Tim's character over a difference in management styles truly shows your character. Kewaskum didn't win with the results of the April 1st school board election as much as many of the present would like to think they did. This was not the outcome. With less than 1/3 of the community voting, the vote only reflects that the majority of the voters were unaware of the importance of this election. They will realize it shortly, too late for the damage that will be done, but they will figure it out. Which of the following is correct? This is a critical thinking problem for all of you Common Core supporters. The result of this election will bring referendums and higher taxes. The result will be a free pass or a rubber stamp for the school administration. The result will allow less community involvement in critical matters. We shall see if all these answers are correct. Thank you.
Consent agenda. Motion for approval of 9A through 9B1, please.
I move to approve.
I will
second.
Motion by Mrs. Mary Miller to approve the consent agenda 9A1 through 9B1. Second by Mr. Jim Leister. Comment or discussion? I would like to ask that an enhancement to the second last sentence of the minutes for March 10th regular meeting be added to reflect the Wisconsin Association of School Boards request that future awards for any board member who utilizes the products and services of this entity is recognized in their community in two ways. One, they're both celebratory. One is to have it announced at a board meeting and make it formal at the board meeting. And secondly, to have it advertised in the local paper. That request comes from them, not from me. And when I received my award on February 24th, my sole goal was to standardize and structure the process so that going forward, I don't know what happened backwards and I don't really care. But going forward, the message I heard from them was, if you go through the work and the effort, people got to know. And the people who elect you in the office need to know. And for 2013, I was awarded that and nothing much happened with it. And that's okay. Let's call that a stake in the ground. But going forward, for the rest of the people at this table tonight, and for Mr. Fisher going forward for the next 3 years, if he finds himself in a position to earn that award, it needs to be celebrated for their sakes. So if you could add something to the effect of that second last sentence to conform with the expectations of the Wisconsin Associated School Board, I would appreciate it, please. Okay?
Yeah, got it.
Very good. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Community engagement, student learning. Mrs. Goodnick.
Good evening. In your packets, you received a number of WKCE results in graph form for specific schools, specific grade levels, for math, reading, language arts, science, and social studies were appropriate. This was the last year of full WKCE testing in the fall for 3rd through 8th and 10th graders. Next year, the fall testing will be just for 4th, 8th, and 10th graders in science and social studies. So what I've done tonight is I've condensed some of those slides into a presentation for you to give you an overview of where we scored. What I've always done in the last several years is to include previous years in this data to kind of give you that trend line look, because one year of data standing alone doesn't give us a good picture of what's really happening. So we start out, and by the way, all of this information can be publicly accessed through WiseDash on DPI. So I just threw up what that page looks like. If you just go to the DPI website, you can go to WiseDash. You can break down data disaggregated by schools, by grade levels, etc. So just wanted to make sure everyone understood that. The first one is our district-wide reading. And what I've done is I have the last 9 years of reading results for WKCE up there. These have all been aligned to NAEP scores, the National Assessment of Educational Progress scores. Over the last 9 years, our score this year was slightly higher. And I included the state average for 2013. So the state reading average was 36.6. Our district state average this year was 40.4. So we look at that. The next slide is for our district math scores. Again, the past 9 years are listed. Our math score this year was 59.2%. The state average, 48.6%. We traditionally do better on our math assessments than we do our literacy or our reading assessments here. And again, this year we surpassed the state average by close to 10 percentage points. I then break it down by elementary schools, and again, I've included the last 9 years. They are color-coded. Blue is Farmington, red is KES, and green is Wayne. And the purple trend line through the center is the average of all 3 schools to get an elementary score. So it just gives you an idea of where has our reading been, or if you look at that trend line, that's probably the best way to look at it, to get an idea of where our reading scores are at the elementary level. Our 4th grade math scores, again, the same thing, the past 9 years by individual school, but then with the purple trend line to give you an idea of when you average the 3 elementaries, where we score as a district. Grade 8 reading, I've done 4th, 8th, and 10th grade to give you a sampling, just as I have in the last 2 years for this report. So our grade 8 reading, you're just going to see one data line there, of course, because we have one middle school, one 8th grade group. One thing to keep in mind when you're looking at the previous slides, the elementary, these middle school, and then the high school 10th grade slide, is that these are different students every single year, these data points. So these are not the same students. It's this year's 8th graders, last year's 8th graders would be this year's 9th graders, et cetera. So you're not looking at the same group of students here. You're not looking at a cohort. Our 8th grade math. Our 10th grade reading. And the trend line for our 10th grade math. When we take a look at these as compared to the state averages, I have placed KSD, our Kewaskum School District, by grade level tested this past fall in blue, and the state score, the average, in red. So as you can see for reading, 3rd through 7th grade, we surpassed the state average, and in 8th and 10th grade, we fell below the state average. Yes?
I gotta ask, we're looking strong from 3rd through 7th, and then we take again at the 8th grade level, and that's just a 1-year jump. Any idea why?
Typically, 8th grade at the state level, when you look across districts, will drop. However, we are below the state average there, so that is something that we have to look into further and dissect that data for the 8th grade to take a look at it. Language arts, again, Kewaskum School District in blue, you're only going to see 3 grade levels. That's because language arts is given at the 4th, 8th, and 10th grade. And here we either matched or exceeded the state averages. For mathematics, in all grades that were tested, 3rd through 8th and 10th grade, we were either, we were above in all of them. Science is 4th, 8th, and 10th. And here, 4th and 8th grade, we're above the state average. 10th fell below the state average this year. And social studies at 4th, 8th, and 10th was above the state average. The next couple of slides are cohort slides. These are the same kids. So when you're looking at this data, the 3 data points in the 5th grade reading, for instance, is going to tell you as 3rd graders how they tested in 2011, as 4th graders in 2012, and then the final data point in 2013. And these are 5th graders across the district from all 3 elementary schools. The 5th grade cohort for math, past 3 years. The 8th grade cohort for reading, and here you'll notice now that you will have 6 data points because this will go back 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Our 8th graders in math over the past 6 years. And then the next is the 10th grade cohort. For reading, you'll have 7 data points. They will test in their 9th grade year, so they'll have 7 data points. And for math. And then finally, the last couple of slides that I've put in are some of our gap data. This has become more important to the state when they are calculating our state report cards, which will come out by school and for the district this summer. Those are usually released sometime in August, September, early September. And so this first one, we're looking at our reading gap scores between our economically disadvantaged students and our non-economically disadvantaged students. Economically disadvantaged would be defined as receiving free or reduced school lunches. And as you can see, we do have some deficits. There's some gaps here between students who are receiving and those that are not. In the blue is the economically disadvantaged, in the red is the non-economically disadvantaged. In 10th grade, pretty close. Pretty even Steven. For math, the same thing. In blue are economically disadvantaged students, and in red are not economically disadvantaged students. And then the final gap scores that we look at are between our students with disabilities and our students without disabilities. And again, these are prescribed by the state. These are gap scores that are put onto our state report cards, so that's why I bring them to you tonight. Here we see a greater discrepancy between our students with disabilities in blue and students without disabilities. You'll notice on 2 of the grade levels there is no blue bar. That means that none of our students with disabilities at those 2 grade levels were proficient or advanced to be able to compare them. And then the second one is students with disabilities, students without disabilities being compared in mathematics. So because these results were just released to the public and we have just begun to dissect the data and disaggregate the data, what will happen internally here is that our schools will look at their data by grade level, and they will also do their own trend lines.
That's where they often will get into much more detail to start digging into the hows and whys and where is this cohort group going at those individual buildings when we look at the trends. We also would never look at data at one singular data point like WKCE. We will certainly put this right alongside of our STAR data, our internal benchmarks that we use for reading assessment, for instance, at the elementary, and also grades and teacher anecdotal data when we're trying to determine what are our next steps, what are we looking at here. There are some things that come out of just this general overview of the presentation for priorities. Reading achievement is consistently lower than our math achievement here. And this year, we, even though we were close to the state, we were over the state average, we were pretty close to it for reading, and in 2 grades, 8th and 10th, we fell below that state average. Our math scores have exceeded again by almost 10 percentage points, and again, that seems to be our pattern here. So we're seeing that our greatest need for student intervention is falling in that reading category. So what we will do, because that has been relatively stagnant and we've started talking about this already, is we know we can do better with our reading scores and we want to do better. Going up a percentage point a year or a couple percent is not enough. We want to see more of our students proficient or advanced on those assessments. And so we will definitely be focusing on professional development and any kind of staff coaching that we do internally on a literacy professional development move. And we'd like to do that over a 3-year period. So start with something that we extend and continue to build on over 3 years versus, well, we see a reading problem, we're going to do this next year. We want to do something that we can continue to build upon. So when we come back at our next board meeting, I believe is when we talk budget and staffing and we get into more details, that will be part of that presentation. How will we be expending the curriculum budget to build this literacy plan and appropriately staff to do that as well. Any questions?
The data was pretty interesting. It does look like there's a couple of problem classes that kind of appears face-to-face of looking at the data because of the sharp drops in both of those classes. I guess I wonder what we can really do about particular classes.
The schools can do a more detailed data analysis and actually do item analysis of some of the test questions and the categories where the questions came from so that we can say, for instance, if we're struggling with analyzing text versus extending textual connections or something like that, that would be a focus for that group of students either during their intervention times or making sure that it's covered in the English class as a focal point. So there are ways that they will go in the individual schools and start looking at some of that.
Yeah, the interventions.
Right.
How dated is that trend, that negative trend? Is it, you said something about it's fairly common for that 8th grade?
For the 8th grade across the state, yes. I don't know exactly what the percentage drop is off the top of my
But
head,
how many years worth of testing have we had that problem at that area, at that level?
How many years? I could, certainly pull that up and look at what is the typical. What I do is I pull the state averages for 7th to 8th grade or 5th to 6th grade over 5 years and see what that drop is to be able to see what the transitions are.
So is your question historically 8th graders kind of dip over
Yes.
10 years, or do they usually go up, but we see a dip this year? And I think
No,
the answer to that is historically there's usually a dip in 8th grade.
Correct.
And realistically, if it's more than 10 years back, there's a dip. You really don't imagine we care nearly as much as the last decade.
What I'd be interested in looking at is what is the dip for the state over the last, what is our dip? Are we in line with what the state is? Are we greater? Are we, do we have a smaller gap?
It pulls you away from thinking it's class specific. It might be something in the program or the mechanics of the program. And that's why I was asking the question.
Right, and that's why we do the data both by year and then do it by cohort where we follow students.
Yes, the cohort looked pretty rough as well.
Good stuff. Thank you. 11A, health insurance update, Mrs. Sumar.
We met as a committee and We met as a committee, that was last Monday, and we brought in associated, and they had provided us several different options with United Healthcare. That's who we are with in the co-op, as well as Humana bid out our insurance as well. So in that meeting, we dissected all these different options on the table, and we asked Associated to go back to, do further research with Humana, and we did get some more competitive bidding in from that. So we'll need to discuss that as a committee as well, on how we're going to progress forward. As far as what we can see is, we can have, looks like we have some significant cost savings by going out of the co-op. However, I don't want to state all that until we discuss as a team with that. So within the co-op, we have to, if we decide to get out, we have to have that decision made by the latter part of April to give them notice, because that's up for renewal on July 1st. So, and then of course, we have to make sure we have education to staff. Did anyone from the committee want to add anything in regards to our meeting? Yes, no, Jim?
A couple of the highlights, what Sue said is that I think we need to thank Humana for bidding and thank Associated for going back and kind of ruffling their feathers a little bit after our meeting. The meeting on Monday was not what we anticipated, and we were somewhat disappointed in what they came up with. And we asked them to go back and sharpen their pencil, and they did. Specifically on option number 6, if you would turn your attention to that one, you're still looking at a $250 and a $500 deductible, which is the same as it is now. The only changes in the program that are more costly are urgent care costs would go from $40 to $75 a visit. And emergency care, if you do not get admitted to the hospital, if you go to the emergency room, you get admitted, all bets are off. But if you don't get admitted, it goes from $100 to $250. Everything else is exactly the same. And in that cost, a family plan would be $775 less than it is this year. And it would be $342 less for a single plan. So in the world we live in, to find a decrease in costs and have this basically the same benefits for our people is pretty outstanding, and we're pretty lucky. And we should feel pretty good that we shook that tree long and hard enough to find something that would be very beneficial for us. It also does create a couple of other things. One is that we do get out of the co-op. The good of that is we can get our claims experience. One thing we have to be concerned about is then once we're out of the co-op, we're out of the co-op, and then we're on our own. So our claims experience will drive prices in the future, and we're on our own, which can be good or bad depending on your claims experience. But that's something that's a factor. And the second thing is that the Humana plan seems to have a lot more going for it as far as wellness programs are concerned. And we need to concentrate on wellness programs. So we need to put a high emphasis on wellness programs to the point of almost making it mandatory for our employees, because we are going alone, and if we are an unhealthy group, those costs are going to go up significantly. So we have to do what we can to see and make sure that we can be as healthy as we possibly can.
I was just going to add the wellness program with Humana is really, really impressive. It's called Vitality, and it holds a lot of personal accountability with their program. So it's not like a one-fits-all. It's a very customized approach. After having a health assessment done, it advises on things you need to do, setting goals, diet, and you get rewarded for your efforts for it. So it's pretty neat to see that.
So there are like incentive-based built in for the employee based on all the different criteria that they meet or, right, excellent, that's
Which affects the whole
absolutely.
program, the cost drops. And I think the return also out would be the improvement of health, which requires business, so it's a double win. I have a question, Mr. Smock, I'll direct it your way. In the meeting, Mr. Grislano liked option 2, but not under United Healthcare. And I thought one of the tasks we had for the Humana rep was to come back to see if they could do something close to that. Was that part of the sharpening pencils action as well?
I believe that if you look at option 2, the 1,500, 3,000, the closest that they could come when they resharpened their pencil was option number 7.
So they didn't try to match? Or,
No.
okay, that's all. I'm just asking on behalf of Glenn, because he was pushing pretty hard for that, and we talked a great deal about the impact to the employee, and it's essentially a wash. Or what did he say? It's $600 a year saving kind of thing over what you pay versus what the deductible is?
If you were looking at the option in 2 versus 7, that's option 6 is totally different. So
I know, that's what I'm asking.
yeah, so it's not comparable. So his question now becomes
Okay.
null and void.
Well, the point being that what they're looking at is a higher deductible with a lower premium cost. However, it's a $1,000 increase in the single deductible and a $2,000 in the family, and the decrease potential was only $150 a month, which is $1,800. So if you're raising the deductible by $2,000, the premium's going down by $1,800. In many folks' ideas, it's not worth that risk to expose themselves to a $2,000 deductible. So based on that math, I'm not being part of that conversation, but we're in a good situation with option 6 as far as bang for the buck.
Well, and I attended as just a part to listen to what was said, and then Glenn did change his mind a little bit when taking into account that this is the pre-tax. The premiums are pre-tax, and then he didn't figure that out when he was doing the math.
And when it's pre-tax, it's not just pre-income tax, it's also pre-Social Security and Medicare. So those are half on top.
Just a question, do either of these companies offer any type of HRA or anything like that? Is that being considered or kind of off the table, or?
Well, we talked about that on the committee, and it was discussed that at this time we didn't have enough in the budget to back it with an HRA.
Okay, so there's a financial process that has to happen with that too.
You need a third-party administrator, or you have to do it in-house and hire people to do it, and so there's a cost to it one way or the other. And also, when you're doing deductibles of only $500 or $1,000, there's not the quantity of dollars and people involved to make it worthwhile.
Got it, thank you.
Good question.
It's something I think we should consider down the road.
Yeah.
You know, looking at HSA backed by an HRA. So we just felt that at this time it'd be such an extreme and with such short notice to go that route.
Okay.
And the plans aren't quite there right now with the changes in healthcare to offer those sorts of things anymore. So we're limited even on deductibles. We can't even go as high as we used to be able to.
Ultimately, are we looking to offer multiple options for employees to pick from, or are we picking one and across the board?
We have to pick one.
It's one.
And from seeing this, I see one. I don't see a real strong advantage to any of these other options for people in most scenarios because of being able to pre-tax the premium dollars versus a higher deductible. The gap isn't there anymore. Obamacare has crushed the gap between a low deductible and high deductible versus premium cost between those respective things.
The one other thing I should mention is that if we were to stay in the co-op or any other 250, 500 deductible, the urgent care and emergency costs would go up as well. That was not a choice. So that was part of the package that everybody gave us. So we would ask if everyone's comfortable that there could potentially be two motions. One would be to leave the co-op, and the other motion would be to go with Humana with option number 6 being the choice.
Can I make that a two-part motion?
I think you'd want to do it separate.
Make a motion that we leave the co-op effective June 30th, 2014.
Second.
That's the right date.
As of June
Yeah,
30th.
yeah, June 30th.
So as of, just checking on the date, one day. You gotta get out at once. Any second? Okay, the motion is by Mr. Hanson to terminate our relationship with the co-op effective June 30th.
I would say July 1st now that I think about
Okay,
it.
that's
They,
fine.
they gotta have June 30th.
You gotta get through the day.
They gotta get through June 30th today, so it's on
Midnight,
on.
June 30th.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That's even better. That's even better.
Make sure
Okay.
that we're
Yep.
covered.
And second by Mrs. Sumo. You got it, Gene? Okay. Let's roll call this one. I'd like to roll call.
Question first?
Please.
Um,
I'm sorry, any discussion?
Yeah, just a question. Sue, when we first started this conversation, you were talking about going back to committee. Are you thinking we don't need to do that now, or?
I thought maybe as committee want to discuss, but, you know, with the consensus with the savings, which is basically unheard of in insurance in general, sounds like we all agree. I mean, I shouldn't say it like that.
Well, I mean, maybe it's irrelevant for this particular motion, but I guess, you know, if you feel like it needs to go back to committee first, I guess that's my question.
We didn't expect, you know, like when we told Humana to go back and sharpen their pencils and review the numbers, we didn't expect them to come back so significant with a decrease. In fact, we were actually at the time, we were talking about possibly staying in the co-op. And, you know, in fact, Associated had stated that we as a board should be discussing, you know, those are some primary, what are our goals with our insurance? Should we stay in the co-op, should we not? And, you know, the different plans that we were looking at and such, but when Humana came back with such an aggressive bid, it did make it very apparent that
So that was the only option that changed then. Then they came back and sharpened their pencil. It was option 6 that they were adjusting. Okay. Okay.
The decision, I don't think, is nearly as tough as it was a week ago. If it was a week ago, we probably need to take it back and beat it up. But with this on the table, it's pretty solid.
We would just ask also the more time that we have to roll this out, the better. So if we can cover it tonight, it would be better.
Okay, one more thing then. Have any of these options been rolled out? I mean, you mentioned Glenn Grisolano was in one of the meetings. Have there been any other staff members that have been part of the discussions of these options? Okay, great, thank you.
Mrs. Pagel seemed to be, this is my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, pretty aggressive about making sure we get out of the co-op. She was really pushing for the Humana side, and with the improvement in the numbers, I think it would be acceptable to them as well. I appreciate your question, Heather, because we have a committee process, and they've been involved, as many of us have, from day one on this, and to, at the last minute, turn this thing and make a management decision. I wouldn't want them to be offended, but I don't think they will be. I think Glenn was close to it with 6. I think Ann was there. Bill Shield was there as well. I think they'll be fine with this if we move, and it takes the complication out of the process as well, because if we did go past tonight without closure and we'd have another committee meeting, in my humble opinion, it would really need to happen before the 28th, which would require another session, and I don't think we need to do that, because it's that close. So, I have one other question. You know, in the scope of all this discussion, we focused on carrier names and what they were offering. I just want to poke this alternative benefit. Is that still part of this as well? Would that be part of this program?
That hasn't changed.
Okay, it never got discussed, and I didn't know if it fell off because of the new carrier or something like that, so, right. Okay, so we have the motion, we have the second, discussion is complete. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Mary Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Eelhoff?
Yes.
Mr. Lindstrom?
Yes.
Mrs. Sue Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Grace Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes. Thank you. Just a second motion. Yeah, I would like to ask if Mrs. Miller will do that. She's the chair. Please.
I'll make a motion to go with option 6 with Humana for our health coverage alternatives.
Need any qualifying data as far as date, time, as well as cost, or not?
I would say, as of September 1, to go with Humana, option 6.
July 1st.
September or July?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, July 1st. Sorry, July 1st, option number, Humana, option number 6.
Okay.
There's no false figures or things like that.
No, I think we just,
Okay, yeah, so effective for July 1st, 2014.
No hitch in the giddy up for the staff. They're going to be covered through. Good. Okay.
Second.
The motion is by Mrs. Hugh for the Humana option 6, second by Mr. Troy Hansen. Comment or discussion? Roll call again, please.
Mrs. Eelhoffen?
Yes.
Mr. Laster?
Yes.
Mrs. Sue Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Grace Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Mary Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes. B, charter school resolution approval. Mrs. Williams, Mr. Jadens.
before, as they're getting set up, I just wanted to take a moment and thank Joel and Heidi for the last 2, 3, 4 weeks. They've been pounding the pavement, working really hard at this presentation and making sure that we can put together the best grant proposal. Included in that is the innovation team that they've assembled twice to meet, and some other interested citizens met last Thursday after that meeting, so congratulations to all those people. Just one side note, as far as budgetary concerns with the charter school, we have to prepare and submit a preliminary budget by the end of this month. Therefore, charter school is not part of the budgeting process for next year. This is a standalone, separate item. So we're going to budget as if we're not even trying for that we're not going to get the grant, or that we didn't even try to get the grant. That's the most conservative, best way for us to go. So if we do on August 1st find out that we did get the grant, that money from the grant will then be used obviously for planning purposes, but we could potentially put things back into our Fund 10 budget at that time that are on a waiting list.
What kind of money are you talking?
Well, the grant's for $150,000, but I would suspect that we were talking somewhere between $20,000 and $40,000, because conversely, if we don't get the grant in August, is truly, if we don't get the grant, is truly the time the board's going to have to make a choice on whether it wants to continue on with planning for a charter school or not, because then it would all have to come from local monies. And we went through it today, and we thought that would be somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 that we need to reallocate out of the budget for this year if we're going to continue on to plan for a charter school. So tonight is another step in the grant process that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the budget, and it certainly gives you many, many more opportunities in the future to make the decision on to halt the process or to continue on.
Okay, so going along with what Mr. Camacho just said, as far as making those decisions, as we go through, in your packet, you guys got a copy of the flow chart, and I just wanted to kind of run through where we're at on that flow chart. So over the summers, when the charter school idea was kind of formed, and we talked about it at the summer retreat with everybody, we decided to research the community and research charter schools, and we continued on. We found that there was interest in the community, so we continued that research. So then at one point, we came to a fork in the road, and we were trying to figure out, do we go for a planning grant, or do we jump in and go for an implementation grant and start this next year? And talking with some people, we came to the conclusion that the planning grant would be the route to go. So we've continued with the planning grant application. Our goal is for the doors to open in 2015, 2016. To date, we gave an update back in March about where we're at, and Heidi shared the Prezi, and we decided there was no objection, so we continued going. And now we're here, today is where we're at. We need a board resolution to authorize the application of the charter school. That's where we're at. If we get a no, then we just stop it. That's where we end. If we get a yes, tomorrow we'll be delivering the grant application down to DPI. And again, the grant's for $150,000. Then we gotta wait. And August 1st, around there, that's the date that they say. Hopefully we'll find out before then, but August 1st is the date that they tell us. And that's when that's when we'll find out if we receive the grant or not. If we do, awesome, we'll be cheering and celebrating, and then we'll be heading over this way. If we don't get the grant, that's where another fork in the road is, where we gotta decide, like Mr. Sponsor just said, we're gonna budget for it, and we're gonna take some of our own funds to pay for it. But if we get the grant, then we have the funds, and then we'll continue over here. The next steps in the process, the governance board for the charter school has to be put in place. It has to be a non-stock corporation, so you gotta file with the state for that and get that approved. We would then, and that has to be done by Thanksgiving. We would then, and again, that's another fork in the road where we could decide not to do that. If they don't get non-stock, then we wouldn't be able to move forward. If we do get non-stock, then they would continue on. Then we'd set the application period and the enrollment period, and by February 2015, that's where we pretty much have to have it set, because that's when the open enrollment window is open, so kids can start applying and if they wanted to open enroll into the district. And we have things set in place as far as the enrollment procedures. So then by 2015, we decide we're going, and we're going to start to market and recruit, and then we would open the doors in September 1st, 2015. Right, so that's kind of the journey of how to get there. We're going to kind of run through some of the application pieces with you. This is just the application. This was a fillable document by the DPI. We just had to fill in all this information. And a lot of it's just information about the district and school. Then we had to go through and we had to outline the entire timeline. So this was part that you guys saw. We had everything outlined going back to August 2013. We just documented everything that we did, everything that's been involved in the process. And then we had to, so April 2014, so from here, we had to lay down what our plans are going forward from here. The budgetary pieces, you guys already had all that. And again, like Mr. Schmadl said, $150,000, if we get that, we got ideas on how we're gonna spend it. If we don't get that, we have ideas of where we're gonna trim back to bring it down to 20 or 25,000 to make it still doable if we would decide to go that route.
Hey, Joel, what you just said didn't tie for me. I thought
Me neither.
he was talking about a $40,000 difference, the savings where we could put 20 to 40 in Fund 10. That leaves 110,000 that we would have to spend instead of 150.
No.
What's that? I heard that wrong.
We could take $150,000. We could buy equipment, iPads, do certain things that are in the grant proposal that we would have to put in our regular budget. So we would still need to do those things. So we pull them out of Fund 10, equaling $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 worth of things that now qualify for the grant that we wouldn't have to do in our regular budget. And if we don't get the grant, then we pared that down to bare bones minimum to say, if you still wanted to go for the charter school and we have to spend our own money doing it, the cheapest way we can do it is about $20,000, maybe $22,000. So we still have to commit $22,000. Correct.
Good. All right. So the next part is the executive summary and the whole narrative that goes with this. And it's 20 pages. So
the executive summary and the whole narrative that went with it went through an extensive grant review process. So over the weekend, it went out to our grant reviewer, it went out to Valerie Schmidt, since he's a six, it went out to Heather, who is the Wisconsin Innovative Schools Network Director. It went out and we had it in front of the eyes of our entire innovation team and kind of went through the bits and pieces with them. Quite a few of them gave us feedback on it. And it also went out to some other people that came to attend the meeting after that with some parents that care about kids. So we had it in front of the eyes of a lot of different people. And so what you have, there are some key highlights of a couple things that were changed. On the first page, the executive summary, it was just basically reordering paragraphs. So all we did was reorder paragraphs there. So after the executive summary, which is just a big one page, that's where our narrative starts, and that's where we talked about the why, how, and what, why we were doing, how we were doing, what we were doing. And then we went through all the data. None of the data obviously has changed in the grant application process. What has changed, however, our educational model is all still the same. Some of our goals we strengthened a little bit based on feedback. We did in our first set of goals, under measurable goals for the charter, goal number 1 changed in that we have parents who become active and engaged participants in the I-4 learning community. What changed in that was that we were looking for more parent feedback in a survey. So whether or not the parents were satisfied or highly satisfied with the educational model. So we want the parents really to analyze the model, so we strengthened that. Another place where we strengthened was goal 4. We added in there closing the gap because we had a piece missing that various student parents brought to our attention that we really needed to put more specific wording in there on closing the gap. So we added that into goal 4, that we were going to work on closing the gap by certain percentage points. We also changed just a little bit on the student academic learning goals and broke it apart by math and reading, and we're a little bit more specific with our data with math and reading as well. So we strengthened the math and reading. And then under the professional development plan, under Common Core state standards and Wisconsin state standards, we added a clause in there too that said, or a comparable governance board approved set of standards. And I believe that's it. So those are the basic highlights of just the little pieces that we changed going through to strengthen. Jim?
The curriculum here, that it aligns with Common Core, or the curriculum, the end product of how we educate our kids with this program is different what standards are going to be, correct? For the fact of they learn differently, so you see where I'm going with this? How are we going to measure?
Well, you have standards, and so
Right.
standards are your foundation.
Correct.
So we're going to build on a foundation.
Right.
Whether it's the Common Core state standards or the governance board decides to pick a different set of standards,
Right.
doesn't matter. What we're looking for is the foundation.
Right.
The piece we can't change is the state assessment. We're state mandated to do our state mandated testing, which is like the Smarter Balanced. That's the one our state has said we have to take.
Right.
Smarter Balanced is aligned with Common Core. Hence why that foundation might be the Common Core state standards, since this is the test our kids have to take and that's their foundation. If our foundation happens to be something else and the governance board decides that and it's comparable, it still sets our kids up for success here. That foundation piece can be decided by the governance board.
Heidi? I know the assessments are mandated, but being a local district, we can write an assessment. And likewise, our standards. Standards we have to do, assessments we have to do. But they can be locally picked.
So how?
And with Common Core, it's hard to say it's the base because Common Core is copyrighted, and you can only add 15% to Common Core standards. So I can. But there's nothing saying that you, as a charter school and a charter school operator, cannot write your own standards and your own assessments.
Yeah.
As long as we have standards and assessments. But they do not have to be Smarter Balanced or Common Core.
They do not have to be Common Core, and that's what I put in there.
And if you're going to do a Smarter Balanced test, then you have to use Common Core standards because it's aligned to it. And I don't know how else you could Smarter Balanced if it wasn't aligned to Common Core.
Were you able to read the email and the legal documentation?
Yeah, in fact, I printed out the.
There are Wisconsin state statutes on the board, and the Wisconsin state statutes say there are federal mandates with No Child Left Behind that we have to meet. And the Wisconsin state standard says all public schools have to take a state-approved test. And our Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction has endorsed Smarter Balanced, saying this is what districts have to take for that public assessment piece.
It also states, except as provided in sub 7, if the school board has developed or adopted its own 4th grade examination, administer that examination to all pupils enrolled in the school district, including pupils enrolled in charter schools located in the school district in the 4th grade. So, I guess, like I said, if the charter school writes their own assessments and their own standards.
Yeah, the charter school, regardless of that piece, the charter school will have a very high level of standards, and we will be writing common assessments that we're going to be benchmarking our own data off of. So we will have that common piece. We want to make sure that we can compare and making sure that we're going to be successful against the state measures, and that's really important that we compare apples to apples. Kind of like how you guys were looking at that reading data, and you couldn't really tell if it was that cohort. We want to know that our practices are being successful as compared to all of other schools in Wisconsin, to know that we're on the right track and we're doing a good job. And we can't do that if we pick a different assessment.
So we would have to, like Gracie said, write our own curriculum and write our own assessments and make sure they're tied to Smarter Balance, because that's still the.
Yeah, if you could do that.
So what would that cost?
Oh, I knew I wouldn't want to begin to think about what that would cost. Time-wise, to be able to do it, because it went through thousands and thousands of educator eyes. I mean, you're talking about over 10,000 people in a review process that reviewed that test.
Dr. Stotsky, who's working with Germantown right now, is doing it for absolutely free, except for the travel expenses. So, there are ways to do it in a timely fashion and by an expert. She's giving advice to you.
Yes, I was, Grace, and what I heard was that she was going to help them write their own standards.
Right.
Had nothing to do with the Smarter Balance assessment. She's going to help them write their own standards.
Absolutely. Because they wouldn't, you couldn't use
I'm sorry?
They're one and the same.
That's the misconception, and I don't want to, bore the whole entire audience with all the different pieces of it, but if she's something that you want to bring in, I'm sure we can bring,
For tonight's purposes.
For tonight's purposes, yeah.
For tonight's purposes, it can be a different set of standards.
I'm just, my question
And it's
was,
in the grant that way.
I don't mean to go out now, I'm just, everybody learns, what's the word,
Asynchronously.
Yeah. All right, so we have all this time, we're educating the kids the best way that they can learn. But, is that going to, if we have to take a Smarter Balance, whatever the assessment is, whatever we're doing, is that going to be, are they going to be able to flow right into that without any problems? That's my question is, you can develop, and the child is learning great, but if it isn't the material, it's almost like we got to teach to the test. As much as I hate to say that, because that's what you're going to be graded on. So if we have a student that we've educated and they're top notch, but if they're not educated for that test, see what I'm getting at? So that charter, you guys put all this time and effort in, but if we're not, and that's why I'm asking is, are we going to be aligned that if you're proficient in the test and everything, it looks good and everything is going down the road the way it should be, or is it that we have great kids here, but because they don't do well on whatever the assessment we have, are we shooting ourselves in the foot? That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, because we're going to take whatever we decide those base level standards
Right.
are, the kids will be designing their own curriculum.
So
That's
it-
the power of this. They'll
That's great,
actually
and that's
take
what I'm-
those and design
and that's what-
how they want to learn it.
But that's great, but then how does that, however they're going to do their curriculum, how does that get to the assessment at the end of the day?
Because they're going to say, I have to do this, 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 this on the assessment, and here's how I want to do it, and here's how I want to learn about it, and here's how I'm going to put the pieces of the puzzle together to put it into application practice. So for example, if it's, I have to add 2 digit by 2 digits, that's a skill that they're going to have to be able to do. They're going to say, you know what, I want to do that by doing it with blocks. Or somebody else might say, I want to do that by doing it with my partner and we're going to work through problems on a whiteboard. Or I want to do that by, and they get to decide the path of which they want to do it. I want to learn that by sitting down in a seminar with my teacher and a group of 5 or 6 people. I want to do that at home on a Saturday on my computer by watching video from Khan Academy.
Fair enough.
That's right.
That's right.
So So I want to take that piece off of it. You know, whatever standards we decide, whatever
Right.
standards the governance board decides, that's kind of a non-entity because we will use something strong and foundational as long as we can make sure that we can compare ourselves with how other people are doing, which we need that standard of comparison.
Do you want to show more of that? Or
Oh,
are we started?
that's it. Those are the highlights.
Thank you.
Before you sit, this is a question for you, Heidi. I think it is actually. Could you put a little more traction around the infrastructure, the physical presence piece of the charter school in conjunction with how Wayne Elementary currently exists? It's going to be at that facility, right?
Yeah, one of the pieces that they asked with the grant and one of the things that they're looking for is that the entity where the charter school is going to be housed is going to be autonomous. So that means that they, they take and they apply for waivers for certain policies to meet what it is that they're doing. So Wayne would be the physical location of that charter school because of its size for one, and you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. You want to start small and you want to scale up innovation. And that's the whole thing, that we want to work with the school and with the community, with all the other elementary schools to look at best practices and scale up.
So one of the questions I read when I went through multiple pages was, are you going to establish this charter school at an existing school that's not autonomous? And the answer was no, which means it's going to be separate. How can it be separate at Wayne if you've got functional activity existing already at Wayne? What does that do to Wayne as we see it today?
What would end up happening is we have approximately 100 people that could apply to the charter. Anybody that's currently at Wayne would first be allowed to go to Wayne and stay at Wayne. Anybody that didn't want to, just like we do now, they'd hop on a shuttle and go over to KES if they didn't want to stay there. Because you don't want this model's not for everyone. We realize that we're not trying to force the model on everyone. We want to give people an option. And right now that's happening right now where kids are getting on a shuttle at Wayne and going over to KES.
So conversely speaking, then, if there are students at KES or Farmington that want to come out to the charter, then you have that inflection. What about numbers? I mean, I was looking at some expenditures for the year just for the charter school that were triple digits. First year, 850, 173.
And open the door too, please. The door has to stay open.
You've got an existing expense with Wayne today as it exists. Now you're talking about a new expense for the charter school. What are we talking about? Blended expenses, or are they separate? What is that? Can you give me some clarity on that?
I think, Tim, to answer your question is that there's not going to be a dual educational system at Wayne. If the charter school is out at Wayne, that's the only educational system that'll be out at Wayne. And if kids have first priority out in Wayne, if they choose not to, they will get on the bus that already exists to go to KES. And they will go to KES for the traditional style of learning kids, for a lack of a better way to put it. So there really isn't any additional costs.
So the ones we have for Wayne today will be replaced by the ones for the charter school?
If they choose not to want to go through the charter, they're going to have, nobody's going to be forced to do this. We already have transports between Farmington and KES and Wayne and KES. So they can get on that bus and go to KES. And we would not have to hire a new teacher to do that.
Next year enrollment happens to be, I believe, around 86 kids. My guess is through this charter school, and our hope is that we can actually exceed that, and that we have more than 86, but we're going to cap it at 100. So we're actually increasing the amount of kids that are in there using that facility, that structure.
And this could possibly increase enrollment in general, possibly.
Just to give you an idea, West Dallas, West Milwaukee, when I took some teachers just to kind of go on a site visit, one of their schools increased their enrollment by 150 kids, and the other one increased their enrollment by 250 kids. And they're a landlocked district, so it's not like we're building that.
Roughly what percentage of the existing was that?
In the one, I'm sorry?
50%.
50%.
Wow.
My last money question. So there's no way to tell what we'll save or what will incur as additional costs between Wayne as it is today and charter school?
And that's an interesting question, and I don't think there is an answer to it, because the grant you are trying to predict what costs are going to be associated with some of the things 2 years from now. Because this isn't even for next year, it's for the year after, based on this year. So there's a 2-year gap in there. We know how many teachers are out there and our overhead and our costs today. We're assuming that the costs are going to be less 2 years from now, given the different configurations and the lack of needed less staff and potentially more kids. So per student costs are going to go down. I mean, obviously that's the goal. And to someday, you know, start off a little bit, 100 kids, that can be 125 kids the next year, can be 100, could be 200 kids the next year, is to fill up the building.
And we're looking at community partnerships to help offset some of the costs as well. So you keep going for grant money, you keep going with community partnerships. And I've already talked to Milwaukee Public Museum, the Milwaukee Public Zoo, we've talked to Kewaskum, we've talked to 4-H, we've talked to a lot of entities that are already expressing interest in this, and for what we call it an agricultural model of education. Sir Ken Robinson is, and some people have already heard this, but Sir Ken Robinson talks about how the industrialized model doesn't work anymore, and we need to move toward an agricultural model, and that looks different in every building, in every place, in every community, it's different. So how do we grow that organically around our community resources, and how do we best do that? It's totally new. I don't think anybody's really done this organic model of education, and that's why we're looking to be the pioneers. We're looking to be somebody first in line to develop something like this.
Hey, the charter school you were just talking about,
they are not a charter. They are a public school who is flipping their entire model to next generation learning. So they are not a charter.
They're doing it internally.
They're doing it internally. Through having it grow organically inside, but internally, yes.
Which is something that we need to look at no matter what anyway.
Right.
One more question. I noticed that everything is always K through 5 with the charter school. What about 4K? Can you speak to that? What the plan is for 4K out there?
I would hate to speak to that plan because I think that's part of the governance board, and I think that's part of where the community and the parents get to have a say in that, and the governance board should get to guide and direct part of that.
So tonight, we need a
Board resolution to approve for us to submit the grant, the application.
Is that all it needs to say, that to move to approve a resolution to submit the grant for the charter school? I so move.
Can you specify it to the planning grant only? So if the planning grant isn't achieved, that it comes back? You follow me?
That's a guarantee.
Yeah.
If we don't get the grant,
So if we don't get the grant, then we have to start from scratch again as a new board or a board from scratch. It's not going to be a continuance or there.
Clarification, on the August board meeting, the board, if we do not get the grant, would have to decide whether or not it wants to continue to proceed exploring starting a charter school for the next year, or to halt that for another year and see if we can go back and try to get the planning grant again. Or do we want to use local funds to try to do that?
And
So
for wording, one of the pieces that we heard loud and strong from DPI is they really wanted that the boards are, that they are in agreement that we are going to develop the charter school, with the caveat that there's still those turn back points within there.
You have the resolutions. We would use a resolution that was used from other school districts to formally put it in the grant. What we need tonight is just a vote and approval to send that resolution forward.
Second.
The motion was by Mrs. Mary Miller with a second by Mrs. Sue Miller. Jeannie, could you please, I'm sorry, any comments or discussion?
I just want to ask a question. Do we want very specific verbiage, like you were saying, to be used in the grant?
We
guess that's up to you guys. Do you want the official resolution?
Verbiage.
Well, Joe, look, Jeannie, could you please read back what you have so far for a motion on this?
I really don't have one. I was writing motion to approve a resolution authorizing submission of the charter school application.
Give it to me. Have Mary look at it. Thank you.
It's technically going to be an amended motion, but I think that's what
Okay.
amended.
I move to make the resolution, today's date, to approve the filing of a grant application for the Kewaskum School District. What is it? I for Learning Charter School.
You
That's
get
it.
off of
Okay. Yeah.
Second.
Simple.
Sue's second this. Any questions on the motion, anybody? Comments or discussion? Roll call, please.
I have a discussion.
Now's the time.
Okay.
We just start voting.
I'm a little concerned because in my email to Jim of March 27th, I compared it again with Kewaskum University. Kewaskum University never got a formal board approval. Because when I asked you when Kewaskum University was approved, you said yes, your answer to me was yes, it was approved, but it was based on the minutes of the December 11th, 2006 regular board meeting, but no formal vote was taken during the meeting. Additionally, there was a curriculum technology report news release that went to the statesman outlining the program that was published in the paper. So I wouldn't want to see this charter school be construed as being approved by the board as the Kewaskum University was. That was not, and how, I don't even know how you can say it was approved when, if there was no formal approval, even if the school wasn't meeting, that's all. But I just want to make that comment. Just want to make that comment.
2 points. That was 7 years ago and 7 boards ago. And we already have spoken at great length about how this is a planning grant, and it stops at the grant. We have a flow chart. If you get this thing, it's as documented as you can get outside of putting in blood, that we're not going to just roll forward. There will be steps of approval in the process. Can I mishear what we're doing?
I just want to clarify, I guess, because everything up to this point has been that we can rescind, basically. So is what Grace is saying correct? Once we approve this tonight, we're moving forward, unless we take it off the table again.
This is just to approve the submission of the grant.
Or are we going to be looking to approve at every one of these steps where there's a possibility for a fork in the road? Are we going to be approving or voting at every one of those junctures?
If we get the grant, then we have to say, yes, we're gonna go forward, because you can say no and not even get the money and say, you know what, we don't want it. If we don't get the grant, you can say, yes, we still wanna go forward, we're gonna back it with our own money. We could even say, yeah, we're gonna continue the planning process, and halfway through the planning process, after phase 1 funds, take those phase 1 funds, use for more planning, and at that point, say, no, we're not gonna continue.
So you're telling me that there will be opportunities for this board, the next board, to vote at every one of those spots?
So if we go, we give the resolution tonight, we get the grant, then we're gonna have to say, okay, now go ahead and implement. I think that's what you're getting at.
Well, there's like 3 different things here. First of all, by virtue of having this resolution tonight, pretty much placates what was mentioned, because you're voting here and now to keep moving with the grant. So there's nothing that's going to sneak it into the budget and backdoor it, which I think was the feeling of a board 7 years ago. So that's taken care of. Secondly, what we're saying is that in August, we're going to find out whether we get the grant or not. So if we get the grant and you guys choose not to want to still do it, something happens between now and August, and you say, no, whether we get the money or not, we're not going to go forward with the chart, you're going to have that opportunity in August. in August, you're gonna have to make a choice, whether we get the grant or not, to move forward. Then there'll be other steps along the way, because there's a governance board thing around Thanksgiving. There's open enrollment that starts in February. And then there's actually opening the doors September 1st of 2015. Along the way, at any juncture, any board member can say, I want to revisit this, and you can make a motion and stop it.
I think that's what Grace's question is, moving this forward tonight doesn't just give the green light to move it forward to the end of the line.
No, that's why we did the flow chart.
That's fine.
And if somebody didn't like it, there's a thing called a special meeting that anybody can call to throw the brakes on. Right?
Roll call. Please.
Mr. Royster?
Yes.
Mrs. Sumiller?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Grace Miller?
No.
Mrs. Mary Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Ayala?
Yes.
Mr. Ramper?
I'm going to abstain given my condition. Review salary compensation vendor information.
Okay, we've got two vendors we're looking at from a salary compensation standpoint. There's Verisight, which is run by a person who used to work with the Hayes Group, which is a well-known benefits organization out of the Milwaukee area. Then there's MRA, who was in, first one's in. And what we have is we've got a case of, I think, vastly different proposals. Starting with the bottom line numbers, Verisight is a $20,000 proposal. MRA is a $31,550 proposal. There's obviously a vast difference there of 50%. But there's also another difference as far as hours that they're going to use for implementation. We have 50 hours with Verisight for 20 grand, or 197 hours with MRA for 31,550. We had a case of 3 years of pay freezes. We had a case of 1% raise last year. We had a lawsuit over pay after Act 10 kicked in. I think there's some clarifications that are needed in the salary structure, and I don't know that 50 hours will do it. Not with a staff of 130 teachers. So as you look down the list, you can see what is off there, the different steps. Everyone up here's got one. It's too much for me to try to read it to everyone. There's a lot of hours and dollars involved here in the multiple step process. So that's what I see with this vendor comparison, is it's kind of apples and oranges. So it's a matter of what our district needs. Sounds like Verisight has some standard canned proposals they put together, and you kind of get your pick of the canned proposals. Whereas MRA seems to be more custom. I mean, they're more money, they better be. So then it comes down to, for the district, of the value proposition of what do we need and what can we afford, and what's it going to take to get it done right. But if it's not done right, I don't think we want to spend another $20,000 to do it again. So, with all those facts on the table, I guess I need a motion to start it, right?
Well, at the meeting that we were at, you talked about Verisight. You were kind of happy with Verisight when we met with them.
I hadn't seen this yet.
Does the MRA, is that putting the staff or the support staff in there like we had talked about? It's not. Okay, so that's not skewing the comparison here.
No,
It's actually making it even because the other two didn't have anything with support staff, so we had to take cover. That's why MRA came in, made a presentation, put their things together with support staff included. When Verisight and Battelle came in, they said they didn't do support staffs. That would be a total different project. So we had to pull that back out. So MRA came back in and redid their proposal without that in there.
So we do have the comparison at least now of those. two.
Correct.
What's the Fairsight's background as far as what districts? I know when you do this.
She's got a ton. Foresight, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got 20, at least that I can remember.
She's very
Everywhere
impressive.
from,
We were sitting actually there. She's
right, she was
I-
rather than well, she's got Milwaukee County,
Yes.
and she's got Berlin, and
Yes.
Brookfield, and Greenfield, and Glendale.
I think that that,
I couldn't write them down as fast as she was
I know.
rattling them off.
I had written them down, but, sorry
That
about
was
that.
Versailles, I think MRA only had 2 that they got.
Right, they didn't have the experience in school districts like
No,
Fairsight had.
there was at least 20 school districts, and not all in the city either. It was
Right, various sizes and,
rural.
yeah.
Did you,
She's got Campbellsport.
Yep.
did anybody call any of those districts to inquire about their level of satisfaction? Reference type call? Campbell's Pool, either one? Or both?
No, I did not.
I'm not actually on the committee, I was just sitting in the meeting, so.
did they provide any testimonials from these districts that they're working with currently? Did they have any feedback or?
We got, I mean, we don't want to speak too long on this, but we got a little time because we're not going to try to implement it until.
She was asking if Fairsight provided any testimonials from any of their.
Right. Either did MRA. Verisight just seemed like very confident in getting it done because of the. But I didn't talk to her, call any other districts. I mean, again, I'll reach to her if you don't want to try her or whatever. See if we can. I guess. I was very impressed with Verisight, and when we were talking to them that day, I know Troy was very happy with her too at the time. Yeah, I didn't see this either, but
Yeah, that's where I got, that, I was feeling pretty strong about it until exactly see what we're getting.
well, you know, I can use the same argument where you used it on what insurance we put with Julie. You know, are we getting the bang for the buck on the extra thousands of dollars we're spending? I don't know.
Well, back to the insurance issue as well. It's about educating the staff on the insurance system like it is, educating and getting a comfort level for the community on how this is going to play out. And if it can be done in 50 hours, that's great. If it can't, well then we fail the process because if there's not buy-in from the majority of the community on this, that this is correct for Kewaskum, then we have a problem. So that's where the decision gets really difficult.
And where did you get this from?
Jim compiled this information.
It's from here, from these 2 proposals.
So do we need to move on? Do you want to table it till we get more information?
I think it'd be good to get feedback on how it's going in these other districts.
Is Campbellsport
That'd be very
complete?
telling.
Well, I think one of the things is, it sounds to me like what I'd ask is that we allow Julie to call some other business managers from around, because I think there's some question about, did they work with them and did they complete them, or did they work with them? So we don't know that necessarily that was ever completed in all those other districts. So that would be good to know. We want to know that MRAs has less districts that they've dealt with, but have they completed them to successful completion? So I think that's key. I think what we also need to have is from Verisight, what is it that they're doing? Because I know some of you have looked at this. Some districts take 2 years to put something together. I'm very skeptical it can be done in 50 hours, especially given what Troy, I believe, said earlier about our situation. Our situation is unique. It's different than a lot of other places. So I think it would behoove us to make sure that whatever it is that we're doing is very in-depth and does encompass some of that ability to mend some fences.
Then ask her to explain that.
Right.
We sharpened pencils for the insurance process, and it was very effective. I think we sharpened pencils on this, we can get it.
So let's make a request of Julie to try to get 3 or 4 references from each one. I mean, it should be equal.
I think we need to get those questions answered, and we need to understand a little bit more, because
The only problem is, I think MRA's only got 2 other districts, so.
Ryan just got some of the other clients though too. That's
but
right.
Verisight might not have
So-
ever finished the process.
I
They might have
don't, I don't
helped
think
you.
she come to our meeting going, I got these 12 schools, but I didn't finish them.
Well, has she finished in Campbellsport? I don't think so.
I didn't check into it, I don't know.
Well, I'm pretty sure she hasn't.
Another aspect here is just looking at these 2 comparisons, step 3 and 4 are comparing very, very different things. Step 3 on Verisight is 10 hours of time, and step 3 on MRA is 48 hours of time, almost 5 times the number of hours. Step 4 is 2 hours on Verisight, and on the other one for MRA, it's 120 hours. So there's obviously a huge difference in their approach to
Right.
getting this done, those particular steps. So, yeah, I think that's gotta get looked at. What's all involved?
So we have our marching orders.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to work off of Sue's lead comment. We either do nothing and move on, or we table it, which automatically puts it on the next agenda, which is your reorg meeting on the 28th. It's up to the board. You want to
Just leave it alone.
Just leave it and move, and then you can schedule it for whatever meeting you need after tonight to make it part of the agenda for future meetings. Agreed? Okay, so no action to be taken? No table, nothing, okay.
I'm just want to look about significant, Verisight's 50 hours, 20,000, and after that it's 400 per hour, and MRA is 160. We need to watch that too. Those numbers can escalate real fast.
I think that's just division. He's just taking 20,000.
It's not
Oh,
necessarily
I
per
got
step per
Okay,
hour.
gotcha.
Good point.
I thought there was,
School Creek.
yeah.
School Creek and also your bill sheets are the
But that's actually a very good point, to have those numbers added to this, their true per hour rates, should we go above whatever is quoted or something, maybe a good idea.
If you look in the package, it tells you what it is. And what it is that if they gotta come in for another meeting in Verisight, it's 90 minutes plus prep for $2,500. So I don't know that you can get a per hour cost from Verisight. They gotta come back again for another meeting, it's $2,500 for approximately a 90-minute meeting. And it says that right in the proposal. So where with MRI, it's $150 an hour. And the reason it says 160 on here is because they have a one-time initiation fee. Right.
That's not going to support as part of that as well. Yeah. Okay, so moving on.
Good discussions and a good decision to not take action. Item D, reminder visionary committee meeting on April 22nd at 6 p.m. at the Kewaskum High School. Anything further to say? Expectations? Come in with open minds and open eyes and have a discussion to build a survey? Okay. Item E, Common Core. That's mine. I've got this item on here tonight for 5 reasons. One, in the March 24th minutes that we approved about an hour and a half ago, the item states, in consideration of a community member request at the candidate forum, the board is looking to schedule a presentation on Common Core for the public. They are seeking 2 speakers, one to be a proponent of Common Core and the other to address the cons or opponent. The public should be able to ask questions. This topic will be further discussed at the April 14th meeting. That's item number 1. Item number 2, April 9th, Wednesday, I went to Germantown with Mrs. Miller and saw Mrs. Williams there as well. And 4 things were stated that caught my attention pretty well. Not in particular order. The first one that I asked about was a statement by the board president, Mr. I forget his last name, Bob. Open enrollment in and out for Germantown for the next school year are at historic figures. So they have a significant increase of families moving their children into the district. and a significant drop in existing families who had choiced out their kids to not choice out. I thought that was quite profound. I've heard comments from the board about math and enrollment issues being a concern for our district, and I thought I would just bring it to light that particular district is doing something that's drawing significant attention. Item number 2, I asked a question: would Germantown consider partnering with other districts as they work on standards creation? And it was kind of a yes and no answer. At first, the president said, well, we're doing something that's Germantown specific, and then he kind of said, but yeah, we probably could do something. And then another board member said it would be a really good idea to partner with other districts, perhaps within Washington County. So just for the record, the promise of being able to team with other districts working in the same situation with the same challenges is a good thing. Item number 3, what was the vote to opt out back in November? It was unanimous from a board level. I thought that was good and interesting. And last but not least, number 5 item is the superintendent, Mr. Holmes, is incredibly supportive of this action by this board in Germantown, and he was really good to talk with as well. So those are the 5 things I wanted to mention for Common Core. But back to item number 1, the discussion about having a presentation for the public to get questions out on the table to address facts and myths, the things that have been bantering from both sides for months now, would be the reason why this item's on the agenda tonight. So with that, I open it up to the board.
I'd like to ask candidates at the time how they feel about it and what they would like to do or offer to get someone in. I know I can get a opponent Core in, but I don't know any helpful experts on Core.
Mr. Fisher, if you don't mind, I would like to ask for your opinion in this matter, if you have one.
Yeah, I really want to put the different people, different opinions at the table and figure it out. I don't have an opinion right now.
So you said there was more information out there than you would form an opinion. There's a ton of information out there. You can go on Wisconsin Eye and watch the hearings that took place. There's tons of videos from presentations that were given. I find it difficult to understand why an expert from the proponent side is so difficult to find. Or to sit down with an opponent and discuss the matter. I don't know, maybe somebody knows where we can find an expert on the proponent side. We've got a lot of educators here, and DPI is there, but they felt they have to do it for everyone. Then, well, nobody knows any experts on the proponent side.
There's a lot of people, I think, but people are very afraid that they're going to be retaliated against or intimidated as far as the educators believe. It was interesting, there was an article in the Milwaukee Journal yesterday, I don't know if people get the Milwaukee Journal, about the professor that you spoke of, Pesta. Yes, and talked about the absurd statements that he makes, and it's a lot of falsehoods.
He was just on
I
the
know.
radio today,
And there's a lot of inaccurate information that's presented.
He gave factual information.
There's a lot of inaccurate information that's presented as well.
So, well, I heard it on the people today, so I don't want to argue.
Well, the question is, do we want to move forward?
I think it's important that I think we should hear both sides of the issue. Well, does anybody have, is there anyone willing to step up? Have we done enough research to?
I've read different articles and specifically what the standards are and so on, and I guess that they're baseline standards, and you know, we expect more of our kids, but to have some uniformity for what the expectations are, what kids have to learn. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, every profession has standards. We all have to comply with certain standards no matter what profession we're in. When you're in college, you have standards with every class that you're taking, with every profession or job you're going to go into. If you're going into the trades, the skilled laborers, they all have standards that they have to comply with. That's
I
just the way it is.
get that, but that's not why it's on the table. The table isn't about that. It's about, as a board, Sue and Troy made, and Jay made the thing, they wanted to bring it to the board. They wanted to talk about it. They wanted to get comment or out. What do we want to do? That's what this is about. So everybody knows about standards. Do we want to do something moving forward? Do we want to get somebody in here and start listening to Common Core and everything that's with it, or is it just going to be walked away from it?
And there is so much controversy out there.
Correct.
I mean, I think there's a lot of people in our community, and I invite, just like Germantown did, they invited the public there. It wasn't, they had many people from all over. They had more people from all over than their own district parents, because the district parents know what Germantown is doing.
They're going above and beyond what Common Core is. They want more than the baseline standards. They're working above and
They want
beyond.
exceptional students.
Correct.
Not common students.
That's
right. So that is their
They're
goal.
not common students, but they want the exceptions, right?
So then how do we position Kewaskum to have that same
Idea that we
increase in enrollment, because people are, I'll tell you right now, people are going to Germantown because the school board says we don't,
20 minutes away.
gonna go.
because they want more for their kids.
Well, that's what's happening. I mean, there's only one reason that their enrollment's
Increasing the test scores, increasing the
There's
production.
many reasons, but okay, this is where these discussions always go. They get caught up with a little bit of fact, just enough to make it fly. Germantown has a lot of stuff going for it other than they've opted out of Common Core. Building their own curriculum at the Common Sense Citizen candidate forum, I brought up the concept when questioning about it. Let's steal Germantown's. If theirs is so great, let them get a little further along. We'll share. That was my concept 3-4 weeks ago. That's great. That's what this is. Washington County, we've got a bunch of schools here. We could all benefit. So, as far as that goes, yeah, we can do that. Germantown is a big district. They're in a very, very strong area in the middle of everything. They've got a hell of a basketball program, I think, as well, from what I hear.
High industry.
So they've got a lot going other than just this. But let's not forget, what are the standards there for? And Heidi, correct me if I'm wrong, or Joe. It's about curriculum. That's really what this is about. It's about curriculum. So let's not get hung up. If we want to make something great here, let's make a great curriculum.
That's exactly what they're doing.
So, great, okay. Then you better figure out some grant writing, or somebody better, to help us with the funds to generate that. We don't have the horsepower here to do it. We need some starting point. We need some dollars to do this. So we need to commit to the process. We want to have a meeting. Talk about Common Core. Let's talk about what are we going to do about Kewaskum curriculum. I mean, that's a bigger deal.
But back to why we're on this point is, what do you guys want to do as a board with Common Core? Do you want to talk about it or not talk about it? Because that's what was said at the forum.
Well, we can definitely talk about it, and here's what we're going to get. We're going to get facts in pieces. So let's have the discussion. We'll get all the facts out there, and then we can put it through the filter and see what we think when it's all said and done.
I'm talking about having experts from each side of the issue come in, so that when questions come up from the audience, they can be answered intelligently, not by us.
Well, I'm not running it, no.
That's what it sounds like, like we're gonna sit and talk about it.
Well, there's a lot of feelings right out here in the room.
Yeah, but I think we need to bring some people in. I mean, I think if you guys are in support of doing that, I think, let's identify when we want to do it. A general idea of when we want to do it, obviously, and then make it happen. Then after that, and then as a board, we can have a discussion once the community has been brought in and can voice their concerns, get some questions answered, and then we can have a more educated discussion.
But I will tell you right now, if the same thing happens like happened back last fall, where because DPI said they wouldn't come in, the board said, oh, no more, we're not going to have anybody. I still want it, if I can get someone to come in here and to talk to the public, to the parents, I want that person here so they have the opportunity to answer questions. We had opportunity to answer at Germantown, and it was great. And, and some people, oh, this is political, it's the right wingers. Actually, Dr. Spassky is liberal. So she just has her own standards, I guess, as far as what she thinks is good for students and what she feels isn't. And she's very well qualified lady.
I have a recommendation for the board, if it's okay. I've got a couple of weeks from today as a member of the board, and I would like to volunteer myself to search hard, far and wide for a proponent factor to be part of this program. And give me a week. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'll get back to Mr. Smazel by Tuesday morning, April 22nd, with a status on my success or not. And that will determine what you guys can do after the 22nd to the board. So
Wow,
give me a
that's
week.
really nice.
Give me a week from tomorrow morning, and I will put my 100% focus to get somebody in here to make that happen. And you can do your thing with whomever, but I'll fight real hard to get somebody strong in here because I want to know. So you can trust that. I'm not going to bring in anybody. I want to get the best I can find. So, and I'll search statewide. And I'll start with the DPI, unless somebody has a better idea. But okay. So I'll get back to Mr. Smazel. He can send out a message to the board sometime Tuesday morning, the 22nd, on what happened with this volunteer service, and you guys can go from there. Deal? Works? Done? Payroll. Approval.
Make a motion, we approve March payroll of $1,272,211.71.
I'll second. Motion by Mr. Hanson for the $1,272,211.71, seconded by myself. Comment or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Grace Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Mary Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Ilhoffen?
Yes.
Mr. Leister?
Yes.
Mrs. Sue Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Durant?
Yes. Cable.
Make a motion, we approve March bills of $391,808.42.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hanson for approval of expenses at $391,808.43, a second by Mrs. Sue Miller. Comment or discussion? Roll call again.
Mrs. Grace Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Mary Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Ilhoffen?
Yes.
Mr. Leister?
Yes.
Mrs. Sue Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson?
Yes.
Mr. Eckler?
Yes. The next item is an item that I asked to be put on the agenda for this evening. The month of June is a pivotal, the item is the 2013-2014 budget status with a report request comment. The month of June is a pivotal time for school district finance processing. For a budget cycle that you're in, you have to bring your books to closure by the end of June. And that usually doesn't happen until you get halfway through July because you've got residuals, but you have to retro back and get things closed out. Last year, in June, we were under the impression that things were great. And we got to the end of June, and we were 249,104 in the hole. And we had some extenuating circumstances that helped get us there. We had 188,000 IT situation that we addressed, that we had to address through demand and requirement. We had an overage of spending in legal fees of 122,000 and change from a budgeted amount of 85. And we had some outstanding and critically important issues in our maintenance and maintenance department, if you would, to have things done. So we ultimately, as a board, moved into the end of our last year's school year with a deficit, something that surprised me. I don't know if it surprised anyone else, but and one of the residuals to that was a request I made to show. I focused on the legal fees alone issue because it was quite extensive overage. To have a report generated where we could show a starting point of, in this case, $60,000 for the current year, and every month, whatever we incurred as expense, to show a usage rate or run rate, and it would show the total year-to-date used, and then how much we had left over or under the budget. This item tonight is done in similar fashion as that report, where we can tell where we start from as of July 1st, once we get through October's levy approval and getting the final budget approved on November 1st of last fall, all the way till this June. I did send an email to Mr. Smazel and Ms. Thorson, and I got a response from that late this afternoon. I tried to call Julia to get clarification. We didn't connect, and that's fine, I understand. However, I wasn't sure by looking at the reports if the question was answered. And when I looked at the budget information, if you look at page 13 on the business office report to the board, it's confusing to me. I see original budget of $24,461,663, and then there's a revised budget of $24,681,847, and then you've got your monthly activity report, you've got your fiscal year to date, and you've got encumbered and unencumbered numbers. I'm not really sure where we are. I don't know what we actually started with. I don't know what our current usage is. I don't know what the balance is. And what I'm afraid of is when we get to the end of June, when I won't be here, we're going to be short. And I wanted to talk about having a report that was very similar to the legal one. So maybe for starters, Julie, if you could help me, where do I need to look in this 13-plus page report to answer the questions of where we started, where are we at, and how do we look to the end, and what's the balance of our general fund, Fund 10, from July 1st to current date? So I want to make sure I look at both of those, because as I heard earlier tonight when we talked about taking some, for the charter school, we might pull some money out of Fund 10. I'd like the board to have some visibility on whenever there's activity with the general fund. So I'd like to see two reports.
1 second. 1 second, Jim? Okay. Before, when I was a candidate 3 years ago, I had the financial statements changed in format such that we see a percentage of the budget next to the number. Not just a number, but a percentage of the budget. So we know whenever every month we look at the financial statements, you can see percentage of the budget. It's there on an ongoing basis. That's issue number one, which does in more detail. On the financial statements, you see that. It also shows the percentage year-to-date last year, where we stood. And also on the Fund 10, that's an accounting issue that we have to remember. Fund balance only moves at the end of the year. Yes. Correct? So you have like the fund balance, and then whatever our surplus or deficit is, that changes the fund balance. And the fund balance doesn't move from July 1 until June 30, and then it resets. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not a true picture until the end of the year is finished.
Those are the 2 points I wanted to make.
Let me ask this question then. Great. This is good. This is good. This is discussion. How many of the board members know where we started, where we're at?
It reads as a percentage of the budget on the financial statement.
So what page then, George? I'm looking at the business management report. Did you want to jump in?
The normal financial statement structure does. So that's not in that report.
Julie, why don't you come up front?
So I'm playing back into my mind everything you said, and I'm trying to remember all the questions. So normally, part of the business manager's report once a month is looking at the 13-14 budget. So we're just gonna move that piece up and talk about that right now. Is that what we're doing? Okay. And what we give you two pieces. We said we'll give you the financials, which is that 13-page report, and what it does is it gives you the original budget. And then remember we talked at revised budget column, when we talked about the timeline for the budget, that at some point we have to come to you for budget revision approvals, and that's because of how you approved the original budget. During the year, schools have to make decisions about changing where they're going to spend the money from one place to another, and they have permission to do that. It's just in the end, you get a revised budget and you approve it. And so that's where we keep track of all those changes, is that revised budget column. Okay? You will see that in June, and then we report back up to the DPI after you approve it. That's a regular budget procedure. So you've got your original budget, that's the one that you approved at the end of October. The revised is where we're keeping track of those changes that you'll approve. And then you've got the March activity, because you had said in your email that you wanted a monthly activity. So you see that every month in this report. And then you see the year-to-date. And then in the last column shows what's left unspent. So that's one component of how we're showing you where we're at year-to-date for this year's budget. The other component was...
So that answers his first question.
Well, let me make sure. If I look at the revised budget on page 13, it shows me $24,681,847, which is about $220,200 more than the original. So we did have a difference there, 20,000. Then if I go over to the unencumbered column, it shows a balance of $11,049,807.62. Is that to tell me that right now, from a $24 million budget 9 months ago, that we have $11 million left?
Yes. Remember, some of those big payments come at the end of the year. So, for example, open enrollment tuition, we pay that once in a lump sum at the end of the year. We still have quite a bit of our salaries to go through. So that is, but you are correct. You are reading that correct. We still have to spend $11 million. So, yeah.
It doesn't go out evenly throughout the year. That's the bottom line.
Okay, and that's good to know.
And also remember we talked about last year when we were talking about the budget documents, that interfund transfer, which is $1.5 to $2 million. That's a journal entry that we do at the end of the year. So there's a lot of pieces that come into play at the end of the year.
So I'm feeling better about this point, but I don't know what all is going to come in. 11 million is roughly half of what we had to start with 9 months ago, and there's only 2.5 more months of the school year. So we're going to have some pretty aggressive expenses coming in, and that's what worries me. I don't want to see the board get to a place where we have another deficit. That's the bottom line here. I want to try to protect the board and the integrity of the budget process from back in November into going backwards in July. What you're working on right now on 14-15, if you just go through the motions and then in June of 2015 we have another deficit, then well, what do we do right now from 14 to 15? You follow my point? And the same with backwards. So the integrity of the program is in the process is also in play here, and the issue of having a deficit and pulling out of Fund 10, which I don't know what the balance of that is either. You can show me, that's my next question. But again, I hope you understand why I'm asking this. I don't want to have another deficit sneak up on some people who, right now, they're going to leave tonight thinking, hey, we got $11 million left in the bank. But we don't know when it's going to come in, and all of a sudden we might be short, and I just don't want to see that happen to these guys.
I'm not looking at that way. Just for the record.
Okay, so to clarify, this is Julie's first year, and this is my second. So the budget that you're talking about, neither one of us had any planning into that original budget that went over last year. So there were 3 factors that went into it. One was the board approved 188 of that 249 going over. So that's a given. 2 is that the board chose to, and every step along the way, rightfully so, challenge the Kaiser situation, which became much more expensive than originally planned at the beginning of the year. And I believe you read out those numbers. And so that is why the budget went over. And you can throw in buildings and grounds, things that were of high priority as well. So looking at all those factors, Yeah, it did go over $60,000, but a lot of that had to do with a lawsuit that was inherited by this board. Moving forward, in this year's budget, you can take a look at this and you can't say on April 14th, on 2014, we have this much money. It doesn't work that way. There's so much that's been planned ahead, and there's so much yet to pay, and Julie's doing her best to keep an eye on it. We've closed down the supply budget earlier. We know what the salaries are going to be. We still have some some questions about curriculum and technology. We know buildings and grounds is right on this year, and Doug's done a great job of making sure that we don't go over this year. We didn't go over in supplies. The administration has done a great job not going over, but we can't 100% predict things that haven't happened yet. And there are a lot of things that are going to go into that budget, but we are working very diligently to make sure that the things that we can control are staying under budget at this time. And we made a promise to this board that if we saw something was out of kilter or out of line or a red flag, that we would bring it to your attention pre instead of post. And the pre that we brought thus far this year was we were really worried about utilities. This is the worst winter we've ever had, and we're still staying within budget. There hasn't been anything yet that we have a red flag about in any of the other categories. So the year-to-date, this is an accounting system that the state makes us use. I don't know that any one of us would necessarily use this in our own accounting at home, but this is what the state tells us we have to do. We're keeping an eye on it as best as we can, and the only thing I would add is that this budget does not reflect the culmination of the lawsuit. That is coming out of fund balance. That was a board directive at the beginning of this year. So that needs to be separated from the end of the year things.
The second component that we talk about every month when we're talking about the current year is we bring things to you that we have concerns about. The legal fees was already on there because it carried over from last year, and then we added utilities. We're looking at all the other big items, bi-weekly, transportation, salaries, fringes, all of those big pieces, and while we don't see money left over, we also don't see money left over.
So keep an eye on page 13, if there's pages in every report going forward. What about the Fund 10 general fund balance? That's only once a year? Can you take anything out of that? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, the fund balance is the picture of your equity at the end of the year. That's a point in time, right?
It's like the corporate version of retained earnings.
And we can't really see what that is. You could run a report right now that would give you a fund balance, but it's a meaningless number because until all of our revenues and all of our expenditures report, we really don't know what the fund balance is. Now, if we commit to not going over our budget, then our fund balance will change. It'll be the same next year as it was 30 years.
At the point in time when you check it, but it does vary because it's just more or less our cash flow.
Correct. Sort of, yeah.
That's why we short-term borrow.
But not
So
really. I mean,
it
it's hard
isn't
to
what it is.
explain.
Because you use it and you don't. And then when you take that moment in time check, then that's when the number is true.
And it's gotta be when everything is closed out,
Right.
unfortunately. So that picture in time isn't worth anything until you close your books.
Which is mid-July-ish.
Yeah, we've gotten pretty aggressive. Our orders come at the end of July, so we try to have it done by then.
The other thing to understand about how our fund balance works and what has been built and is being used currently is 5-6 years ago, we were putting up surpluses up until about 2 years ago of somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000 a year, which was adding to our fund balance, which was actually putting us over our range of expected fund balance as it relates to our total budget number. And then that was because of deferred maintenance and deferred technology advancements. Well, guess what? Now we're going back in and dipping into what probably should have been done 3 and 4 years ago. So as much as fund balance goes up and goes down, it's not, you've got to look at it from a relative standpoint and go, well, we're making all these surpluses. Where did our surpluses go? Well, look around. Now we have the updates both in our buildings and our technology that the school needed, again, to maintain and draw more students to the district. So it's an investment account, is I guess how I look at it.
I have no further questions or comments on item C, which is the 13-14 budget expression, but I'm glad I brought up what I did, and I'm glad I said what I did, because it's part of the public record. Does anyone else have any comments about this item?
I don't see those percentages on this one where they used to be. Put those back in. That'll help. It is what it is. I mean, the retailers have Black Friday on the last Thursday of November because that's when they get into black finally. Ours is the opposite.
It's gonna get kind of crowded also.
Yeah.
So we got to go on the big paper.
Maybe just on page 13. So.
8.5 by 14 is fine.
The next item is relative to the 14-15 budget cycle. And again, this item was put on before I saw the business manager's report, and pages 18, 19, and 20 of that speak at a good portion of my interest, which for the most part negates the entry. However, I do have one question on page 18, which is the net change expression, which talks at a total of $218,887. What does that mean? Does that mean that we're short $218,887 from the same time last year relative to the creation of the budget?
No. Okay, so this is the report I've been bringing mostly on the budget for the next year. Remember, just a little refresher, in December we talked about the revenue limit change, and then in January the timeline, which is an over extensive 2-page document. I just gave it to you again this month so you can remember it. And then after that, we said we would bring budget assumptions of things that had changed, because there are thousands of items in the budget. To bring you each individual item would be a waste of your time. What you really want to know is what's changing from the previous year. You're building one budget by starting with the first one, the previous year, and then moving into the next year. So what we did is we created this budget assumption sheet, and we started out with that revenue part on the bottom. We said, okay, the revenue limit is going to go down, that $300,000, which means our budget is going to increase. We are going to get a little bit of relief by increase in per pupil aid adjustment aid. So now we're looking at negative $153,000 about. But then on the top, we said, okay, things go up every year, unfortunately. We knew some of those, and we've been building on them and adding to that list every year. So the net right now is a negative. That is a deficit right now. That can't happen. We need a balanced budget, and we're still working on that. But as Mr. Smalza had mentioned earlier when we were talking about things that led up to this, we're still waiting to finalize the big pieces, the technology, the curriculum and instruction, our B&G budget, and some staffing divisions. So we're not there yet. Does that make sense to everybody else, how we did this, how we presented this to you?
So between now and the end of the month, we have to give you a working budget that is balanced. So those core areas that Julie just touched on, we're going to have to move forward on some assumptions and give you a working budget that's balanced by the end of April. So on the 28th, you'll have that. And then you have May and June to look at it, and then July, when we get the new numbers, we get the actual numbers, then your July board meeting, you're going to actually have to make it hard and fast that you're going to take to the annual meeting.
All good? Thank you, Julie, very much. The item from 9C was moved to our next point on the agenda, which is 12E, resignation exchange. Mr. Leister, I'll look to you to start.
Well, like other board members, I have a family and I have boys, and I don't read every Saturday Mr. Smazzel's emails. And on the 29th, he sent one out about Ann, which I didn't read, but I heard about it on Facebook and social media about how Ann is leaving us because of certain board members. I don't know if that's true or not, I was a little say the least, I was a little upset because it was also on Statesman. So I don't know if this is going to be the new norm, because Mr. Hansen has says we work in a free market agent and people come and go, and then we find on Facebook, no, it's the board's fault, people are coming and going. So what are we to expect? Moving forward, is the Statesman gonna announce everybody that's leaving on a Sunday and everybody can comment on it? Or if we don't read it right away on Saturday, again, I apologize, I do have a family. I put the side away on Mondays for the school board, all Mondays. But I found it kind of odd that we didn't do this with the other 3 administrators that left, but this one we did. So I don't know what the parallels are, and I don't know what to expect moving forward. But I just think it's kind of rude to blame board members, because it doesn't work that way. The system doesn't work that way. I can't fire anyone, neither can Tim, neither can Mary, neither can Troy. It doesn't work that way. We work as a board, and we work from the recommendations of Mr. Smazel. So when people post things like that on social media, I just wonder through my head, do they know how the process works? Because if they know how the process works, they will know that we only act as a board when we are in session as a board. And that's why I needed to express myself, because I thought that was pretty ridiculous of how that played out.
Well, I read Jim's information and I read Ann's information, and great opportunity. Great career opportunity, what you're gonna do, I mean, that's phenomenal.
So you would say that the board had nothing in her decision-making, that she
Nothing
moved
that
on?
I read, but I don't do Facebook, so I'm sorry. Nothing that I read officially from Mr. Smazel and Ann
So
said nothing about
you would
that.
not blame any board member for her leaving?
I have no idea about that.
I'm
I
just
didn't
asking.
read Facebook.
I'm just
I
asking.
read stuff from Mr. Smazel and Ann. That's what I went by. Great career opportunity. Hey, what an advancement. Congratulations, Ann. That's exciting. So that's what I'm going by, what I read officially. I don't do Facebook. My kids can tell me what's on Facebook if they so choose. I don't, I'm behind the times.
So you take your head out of the sand sometime, or what?
No, my head is not in the sand. But I officially went
I'm not
by
arguing,
what I read.
I'm not
So
arguing what was sent by Mr. Smazel, and I'm not arguing about Ann's decision.
That's what
I'm
I read.
arguing about an email went out Saturday, and by Sunday it was posted, that certain board members had done certain things for an administration team leaving. That's what, on the Sunday, after it was made out Saturday.
I don't know if that's the case or not. I know that I'm not responsible, so
Well,
that's all I have to say.
for the other board members, I was
know.
very upset to blame anybody of the board, because the system doesn't work that way.
Well, the system should work as a whole, but at many, many occasions hasn't.
Do you have a
That's
list?
what I'm gonna say.
Well, you can say that, but do you have,
I've only brought them up about 700 times right at this table before. So if you missed them, I don't have the time.
I want to move on. I just
Great.
think it's,
So then we need a motion to approve her resignation.
I move to approve her resignation, and thank you, Ann. Awesome. It's exciting.
Motion by Mrs. Mary Miller to approve the resignation request of Anna Gutowski, which will be effective the end of the school year, if I read correctly, June 30th. Second by Mr. Troy Hansen. Further comment or discussion?
Thank you for everything, Ann.
I was just wondering,
You will be missed.
things in contract, you will miss them?
Great question.
So if there's some things in the contract that I don't know if we can discuss, that would have to be brought up.
Can we put this in a closed session for future?
I don't think you need to. The resignation agreement is for the contract, so whatever the contract states is what it is. Well, That's what it is. So there's really no reason to, if you want to discuss at a future board meeting whether or not to have her pay the liquidated damages, then we can put that in the closed session moving forward. There is really no other thing in the contract that would be needing to put it off.
We can prove it if you're going to talk about conditions.
We're not talking about conditions, it's in the contract. The conditions are clearly spelled out in the contract. So if you're approving her resignation on June 30th, you approve that. And then she can come back and ask about the liquidated damages. That's the way it would need to be handled.
Why didn't it work out that way with the other?
They did come back, and the board said no.
But I mean, before that, it wasn't in the contract.
It did work that way. You approved their resignation, they asked you about the liquidated damages, and you gave them your answer. And so now it's moving through the system.
But there was a phone call placed the morning after the election that didn't help that cause. Where board members go rogue. So, and they call former employees at 7 o'clock in the morning. That hurts contract deals like this. So there's another one, Mr. Lyson. So, are we approving the contract or not?
Motion's on the table.
Resignation.
Resignation?
Motion's on the table. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Mary Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Yellenhofer?
We're voting. If you have a question and you didn't get an answer,
Abstain.
Mr. Leister?
No.
Mrs. Sue Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Grace Miller? Mr. Rampton?
I don't want to see her go. For the record. No. Take it up at the next meeting. Superintendent report, Mr. Smazel.
The first thing on is a recognition from the AP testing. We did receive from the Wisconsin Advanced Placement Advisory Council. Kewaskum High School is recognized as a Level 3 Advanced Placement Pacesetter School for impressive student AP access and excellence in AP exam scores in the state of Wisconsin during last school year. So congratulations to all the AP teachers at the high school. Our success rate was very, very high, and our number of kids that took it was very high. So we were rewarded for that. So we'll make sure that that can get posted here in the high school. The grant report, this is a quarterly thing that is brought before the board. And the 2 new quarterly grants are listed on here. So thank you very much for to KES and to the mentoring grant that Darcy's been working hard on. IT update. In some of my previous Saturday morning updates, I have been trying to keep you apprised of what's going on. Heartland was in and doing the infrastructure work for us for the last 2-3 months, and by all accounts did a pretty decent job for us, and we thank them very much. But we didn't feel comfortable just going with one vendor, so this past week we asked another vendor by the name of K-12 Technology to facilitate the infrastructure work and also give us a needs assessment. That was that binder I talked to you about a couple of months ago, that they came in and did a needs assessment, a gap analysis. And so now they're going to get their turn to see how they perform in kind of a test run basis. Concurrently with the K-12 Technology. At the end of the school year, we will bring a recommendation forward as to how we want to proceed with infrastructure. Meanwhile, we talked about Tammy staying in the break fix and the help desks, and again, the feedback that I'm receiving is that she's doing an excellent job, and our help desk tickets are down, and her help is within hours instead of weeks, so that's great. And we also asked Tiffany Wilson, who agreed to be our technology curriculum integration specialist, and she started actually today doing that for the rest of the school year. So we're looking forward to seeing what she can do with the integration with the curriculum and helping teachers out and hopefully kids in the classroom as well. Darcy, could you grab a couple of others there and unroll our banner that's going to be placed over Main Street about our Respect initiative? There's one more article in the paper. You need 3 people, so Julie, do you want to help her? We just got this back today, and it'll go across Main Street. And I think this is a great initiative between our community, and the children are going out this week to get signs put up. The signs are really cool. They're going to go out to the businesses this week, and then this is going up hopefully on Thursday is the goal, and it'll be up for a month. And the signs maybe be up for years, because I know previous signs are still up in some places, so that's awesome. So thank you very much to everybody for this great initiative for our community. Thanks, Vanna Weiss and Pat Sajak. Kind of looks like Pat Sajak. A little taller.
Business managers report. Julie, if you want to, anything additional? Thank you. Pupil services report, Mrs. Ignatowski.
In your packet, you received a final report received from handbook is for your information only. It would replace the existing 504 document handbooks in the district. This was worked on through a effort with other school districts and was approved by the Office of Civil Rights. I would suggest that if it's good enough for the Office of Civil Rights, it's good enough for the rest of the school districts. Sarcastically, it's very good. And our counselors, school psychologists have one for business this fall, and it's ready. It establishes a very clear process for implementing Section 504 plans within our school district. Any questions? This will be placed on our website and will be available for parents so that if they have questions about what it is and what their rates are, it's all on the People website, the People Services website.
And I grabbed the item from the last meeting, March 24th is dated. Remember this? Several pages. I left a message for Mr. Smaso as well, and I had received several phone calls from constituents concerned about surveys that went out last week to both middle school and high school. Is that what this is talking at? Will you talk about the phases and parent survey?
That's a self-assessment mandated by the state, which is surveys that go out to selected families selected by the state to survey special education services in our district.
So
It's a compliance.
This is different than what happened last week. That's what I was asking. All right. I don't know the name of it, I didn't see it, but.
It's a whole different ballgame.
Okay, apples and oranges. Thank you. Done. Last but not least, buildings and grounds report, Mr. Lester.
We met last Monday. Douglas, you out there?
Yep.
Start from the top, please.
In your packet, you guys got like 4 reports. If there are any questions on the reports, we went over the reports in the committee meetings, gender responses, and also a project template that I built.
Can you explain your help desk tickets a little bit? How many we've gone through this year so far? Explain the process a little bit.
The process is, I have 23 employees and 10 of them work off the help desk system. They get work orders generated by the teachers, the paras, the entire staff, superintendent, business manager, myself. And I built a sample of what one of these tickets looks like for you guys, and then my reports that are going to come out per month, they look back 30 days. So when I generate the report, it looks back 30 days. Here's the closed tickets that each department completes in 30 days. The numbers are in front of you right there. It's actually some pretty impressive numbers when you start running reports on. You know, there's a wide range of categories and category options that they work off of.
The help tickets are on top of your daily operations.
Yeah, what you guys are going to see is the daily operations is a cleaning department that I'm putting together. So that'll be the daily operations report, and then all the other outside requests that come in. Anything else?
Thank you.
Well done. Yep.
Move to adjourn.
A motion by Mrs. Mary Miller to adjourn, a second by Mrs. Grace Miller. Comment or discussion?
Just love
I have a comment. It's been an honor, a privilege, and a labor of love to serve. We are adjourned.